What's up, guys? Dive into market dynamics, analyzing SPY, Tesla, QQQ, Nvidia, and NIO. NIO's fair value at $8.22 amid sentiment shifts prompts questions. Short interest and volume dynamics add complexity. Watch for NIO's uncertain rebound amidst global factors. I'm also going to talk about the overall market, what's going on with SPY, Tesla, the QQQ, and Nvidia, and just a couple of other stocks, and break down why it is possible for the market to get a small bounce just temporarily for the first couple of days of this week, and how this could affect NIO and why it's going to also be dependent on external pieces of news. Before I break anything down, below this information, NIO is down 7.22% for the day on Friday after all the big news about Evergrande filing for bankruptcy, which is still bearish, and very bearish news now for tomorrow. The same thing is going to likely be a big factor that could affect it depending on if NIO is part of the bounce for the market or not. But there is a chance that NIO could try to get a bounce if this thing is very oversold. Now, I just want to mention that, like I told you guys in my earlier videos, the fundamentals for NIO are relatively strong. Things are still strong for NIO, and it's still a very strong company. Okay? Just a few weeks ago, people were talking about NIO going to $100. It was pumping so much, strong deliveries and such, everything just shifted because the whole market started dropping as soon as August started with all the bank downgrades. And then we have this negative news in China. This is not NIO's fault. I just want to make that as clear as possible. But now let's break down the market. How are things looking going into this week? Could you share what I should be paying attention to, particularly in relation to SPX? I mean, we have this possible left shoulder and a head that formed, and we're currently sitting at support on SPX. Could this drop a little bit more and then get a bounce, or is it gonna try to bounce from here? Analyzing the inverse head and shoulders pattern on extremely short time frames, like the 1 minute or the 5 minute, it's evident that there's a possibility of a rebound and the potential formation of a right shoulder. So there's a chance the market could try high, especially thanks to Nvidia's earnings. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, on Wednesday, we have Nvidia's earnings coming out, and we know this thing gets lots of attention from retail. There's a chance that the buyers could step in, and there's a likelihood that a surge in retail interest could drive the share price higher. Apple's involvement could also potentially contribute to the upward momentum, as Apple is very oversold and Apple is trying to get a bounce. Just to give you guys a good understanding of this, on the 4-hour time frame, the RSI thing was actually at about 25 at one point, very oversold. We also formed a bullish divergence on the 4-hour RSI and also on the MACD, so it is due for a small bounce. Looks like Apple is going to try to bounce a little bit more. And on the daily chart, it's at 29, very oversold. Is there a record of previous occurrences when the RSI dropped to comparable low levels? Well, it's been a very long time. We rarely ever see it that low, and it just like last. Typically, when it comes to this low, a small uptick can be observed, so I do think there's a potential for a small bounce on Apple. Either it bounces here or drops to about 160 and then bounces. I think it's going to try to bounce here, and then I'm not saying it's going to keep going forever and go all the way up to like 300 or 200 or anything like that. I'm simply saying there could be a small bounce back to about 180 or so for a possible rejection, which could help you to form this right shoulder on SPX. A temporary bounce is all I'm calling for in the market. Nvidia, which looks quite bullish, could also do the same thing. It could be contributing to this. I think Nvidia is getting ready for it as well. Now for data, there's nothing really coming up for tomorrow. There's gonna be more stuff coming for Tuesdays. We have some Fed speakers, so I will talk more about that later on. But for tomorrow, there's not much to worry about. No crazy data, so I'm going to worry more about that later on for the Fear and Greed Index. We're just about to get fearful. Could this be the time they try gonna get the market to bounce just a little bit, just to trick investors? Because everyone's talking about the crash that's coming. The market is gonna crash. Maybe they give us a temporary bounce thanks to Nvidia and Apple. There's potential for the market to experience a reversal in direction. That's a real possibility. Now, Analyzing the situation with NIO, there was some news that came out. There are other investors coming out, and analysts are saying that NIO's fair value is $8.22. It's funny because there were no articles saying this, like a few weeks ago when NIO was pumping, and they were talking about bullish price targets on NIO's strong deliveries. Now all of a sudden, as NIO drops a little bit, everyone is saying, or all these analysts are coming out and saying that based off its free cash flow, $8 is where it's going, that's the fair value. It suddenly shifted as sentiment is changing because a lot of shorts could have been piling in, and they're just like trying to get NIO down, scare lots of investors. Things like this happen all the time. Deutsche Bank is saying buy NIO shares. There's a big difference. The price-press ratio is dropping, so it means NIO has lost lots of relative strength. And finally, when it comes to significant data, we saw the short interest go up to about 55.44 million NIO shares shorted. So we saw a little bit more NIO shares shorted than before. And the overall volume, it's very important to considering the significant volume of 68 million units. So a little bit less volume, it dropped on lower volume. So it wasn't that aggressive in terms of selling. But remember, the external factors like Evergrande and any news involving China could affect this. So how does NIO look? In my opinion, this thing looks like, even though we do technically have this bullish divergence developing on it, I think it's going to get ready for a bounce soon. But I don't know if it's ready yet. That's the thing. I don't know if it's ready yet. The market sentiment appeared quite bearish starting from Friday. It formed a bullish divergence, so there's a chance it's going to try to make its way up 11 plus. But there's also the possibility of it kind of like breaking the low and coming down to about 10.2 before we get some kind of bounce. There's a possibility that it might experience a further decline towards the 10.2 level before potentially experiencing a strong rebound, or it tries to bounce a little bit from here to get back to 11. It's got to be one of those two. The market is going to likely try to bounce. So there's a good chance that this bullish divergence could play out. If NIO gets above of 10.8, there's a good chance it's going to get a very decent sized balance to get back to. The not you know, there could be more downside. I'm going to break this down in more details in just a second. Just as I presented with SPX, similarly on its SPY, we have a nice inverse head and shoulders that formed on the smaller time frame. The 5-minute chart appears to illustrate this pattern quite clearly. The inverse head and shoulders pattern has been crafted with remarkable precision, resulting in a visually striking formation. So I think the market could try to bounce thanks to Nvidia and Apple. I'm aware that you've also discussed the details regarding Apple's position. Nvidia could also try to bounce, has a very nice looking divergence that formed, and this thing is getting set for it. For Tesla, it formed a bullish divergence. It's possible to anticipate a potential temporary rebound back to around 221. The current pattern suggests a curling movement, forming another formation resembling an inverse head and shoulders, indicating an attempt to initiate an upward push. There's a chance the whole market could bounce quite a bit. Same thing with the QQQ, nice inverse head and shoulders. There's a chance that this could lead to a rise, potentially driving the price back up to the 360 level once again. But for NIO, what about NIO? Is NIO going to bounce? Well, the thing about NIO is it's looking relatively weak. Even in the after hours, it was flat. I'm considering the potential for a bounce occurring at this particular point. It depends on if we get the bounce in the morning or not. But if it does try to get above our 50 EMA, if it gets above like 10.8, there's a possibility that the price could make an upward push, aiming to return to the 11 mark. But it might not be ready yet. It could drop a little bit lower, so like 10.2 could come before the bounce based off this structure right here. 10.2 is where we had a tendency of basing on the 4-hour time frame. So two possibilities: we either drop a little bit more and then we get a bounce on NIO back to the 11s, or it tries to bounce right here after forming this bullish divergence and we get back to 11.5. It's got to be one of those two. I'm not 100% sure because it depends on the news involving China, but a bounce should be coming relatively soon looking at the bullish divergence and the current structure of the stock. So either it drops another $0.40 to like 10.2, and then we get a bounce back to 11.5, or it just bounces from here with the whole market thanks to Nvidia and Apple and these different stocks out there. Alright, so that's what I'm predicting for NIO. It's got to be one of those two depending on the news. So don't forget to pay attention to that with Evergrande and everything going on. But I do believe a bounce is coming soon, and I want everyone to be prepared for that for NIO stock. Alright, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more stock predictions and market insights. Remember to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Happy investing and see you in the next video.